So the classic example I love to give is, and you may remember this, but remember the platform Vine?
Yeah,
It's
sure.
like TikTok, but back in the day, it was owned by Twitter. And for those agencies that went all in on Vine, and they became the Vine agency or the TikTok agency. There's a lot of sort of brand risk, strategic risk in that, because what happened to Vine, of course, is that it was shut down by Twitter. And so after you build, for those businesses that built their positioning and their sort of the market value on the fact that they were the best at this platform, which is, by the way, something that they don't have any strategic direct control over. There's risk there. Same thing with HubSpot, right? There's a lot of agencies, thousands almost agencies who specialize in HubSpot, whereas those agencies don't necessarily have a direct influence on what HubSpot does with their software, with their ecosystem, and so on and so forth. And so because there's that inherent risk, I tend to believe, or I definitely believe, that having a specialization is very important, sure, in what you do or what platform you specialize, but it's almost more strategic to have a specialization in who you serve.
You are listening to Power Marketing with Kevin Lee. Kevin and his agency Did It have helped thousands of businesses win through superior marketing, as have his books, articles, speaking engagements, and the E-Marketing Association Power Marketing podcasts. Here's Kevin.
I'm Kevin Lee with the E-Marketing Association. Most of my week is actually taken up with running an agency, Did It. So that's why I'm specifically interested in chatting with Corey Quinn, who's been involved in the agency business for ages and was inspired to write a book about how hyper-specialization can actually help an agency grow as opposed to the opposite. Because we started out hyper-specialized and it became a little bit more broadly based,
Oh, interesting.
but we still have SMEs in each category. So
Mhm.
this will be an interesting conversation for sure. So Corey, after being involved in sort of various executive roles and business development roles in agencies over the years, what compelled you to decide to write a book about hyper specialization and the biz dev process for agencies?
Thanks, Kevin. First of all, thrilled to be on the show. This is really my first time meeting you. I've known about you and Did It, obviously legendary agency. It's been around for a long time, so it's really an honor to be here.
Thank you.
Uh, and so, to answer your specific question, there's a lot of context that comes around it, but the specific answer is that I had left Scorpion after about a 7-year stint there as their chief marketing officer. And that specifically was a role where I was focused on helping the company to generate new revenue, not client facing, but sort of corporate marketing facing. We grew revenue from 20 million to 200 million. We grew the company from 1,000 clients to 14,000 clients, all this massive growth. And I'm happy to get into some of the details, but about the 7-year mark, I decided it was time for me to uh, move past that opportunity and look for something else. And really, at that point, I had an opportunity. I had a lot of opportunities on the table, if I'm being perfectly honest,
Sure.
because we had such a sort of a public run up of revenue, at least in certain aspects of sort of local digital marketing. And so a lot of people were interested in hiring me, and I made a conscious decision that I didn't want to go back in house, to go join another entrepreneur and help them to build their dream. It was the moment in my life where I wanted to reinvest in myself and start building my own empire, so to speak. And that's what led me to write the book. It's called Anyone, Not Everyone, and it's all about my process, which I call deep specialization, which is solves two things. Number one, which is escaping the generalist trap, which is when you're serving too many different clients and you lack of a lot of scale, you have a lot of context switching internally. And then the other thing that my process solves is it helps founders to escape what I call founder-led sales, which is where the founder is the bottleneck. If the founder's not out networking, trying to find deals, then the agency doesn't grow. So that's what the book's all about.
Great, great. Well, I haven't gotten all the way through the book, but I have started it, and I
Thank
obviously look
you.
pretty carefully at the table of contents. And one
Yeah.
of the questions I think I've heard in chatting with agency owners over the years, as well as having had internal conversations, is that occasionally in the prospecting process, you get the situation where somebody's actually looking for category exclusivity, which of course is the completely antithetical to
Right.
hyper specialization.
Sure.
And I'm curious how you found marketing messages and also giving the sales team the ammunition to combat that. Obviously, hyper specialization, you wouldn't go to a heart surgeon and say, I want to be your exclusive heart patient, right? You'd say, oh, thank goodness, I'm the 2000th heart operation you've done.
Sure.
But at the same time, that seems to come up sometimes in the biz dev
Sure.
process for agencies.
Absolutely. And so most of my experience is, well, at least my most of my recent experience is in the local space. And the context in the local space is if you are working with a, let's call it a fast growing, aggressive personal injury attorney law firm as a client, they're probably paying you a lot of money as an agency. Could be, $100,000 a year or greater. And with that comes an implied exclusivity, or sometimes it's not implied, it's explicit, right? In other words,
Right.
in order to do the deal with me, I know I've got a big spend and I'll be paying you a lot of money, but there's a clear expectation you cannot work with my competitors. And so there's a way to navigate that conversation in that context. And I've also worked at companies like the Search Agency, which you may be familiar, where we would sell deals to the Men's Warehouse, Hyundai, Lululemon, and in some cases, it's certainly in the automotive space. Like they don't want you working with their across the street competitors. Like there's a small pool of big automotive brands, and so that's a different conversation you need to have. But it certainly does come up in the world of specialization.
So you've got industry level specialization,
Yeah,
obviously, and then there can be also different types of boutique subject matter expertise levels of
that's right.
specialization as well. So, what has been your experience around the, generalist agency, but within a specific
Yes,
niche versus, category, or let's say channel-based specialization? So
sure.
did
Channel
it
based,
became
platform
it
based.
yeah, so did it
Yeah,
became, famous in the SEO and SEM category, right? And then
yeah,
we became more generalists from the perspective of service offering as we went to the mid-market, right?
yeah.
So obviously the strategic conversation has to be had in both directions.
Absolutely. So the classic example I love to give is, and you may remember this, but remember the platform Vine?
Yeah,
It's
sure.
like TikTok, but back in the day, it was owned by Twitter. And for those agencies that went all in on Vine, and they became the Vine agency or the TikTok agency. There's a lot of sort of brand risk, strategic risk in that, because what happened to Vine, of course, is that it was shut down by Twitter. And so after you build, for those businesses that built their positioning and their sort of the market value on the fact that they were the best at this platform, which is, by the way, something that they don't have any strategic direct control over. There's risk there. Same thing with HubSpot, right? There's a lot of agencies, thousands almost agencies who specialize in HubSpot, whereas those agencies don't necessarily have a direct influence on what HubSpot does with their software, with their ecosystem, and so on and so forth. And so because there's that inherent risk, I tend to believe, or I definitely believe, that having a specialization is very important, sure, in what you do or what platform you specialize, but it's almost more strategic to have a specialization in who you serve. And the way that I teach my clients is it's better to actually have a specialization in a vertical market. And the reason why is because when you're positioned, as an example, as the go-to agency for dentists for growth or for marketing or for branding, whatever that is, at the end of the day, the clients don't necessarily care what tools you used in order to be able to create the outcomes. They just want someone who understands them, understands their problems, and is on top of the latest technologies and solutions to get them what they want. Therefore, it's more of an enduring positioning than these platform type of positionings.
Right. That's a great point. It's interesting. Obviously, it's not just the agencies that are at risk if they over specialize from a channel perspective. I mean, a
Yeah.
whole bunch of influencers who are TikTokers suddenly realized like our entire platform may disappear if
Right. Their livelihood. Right.
legal or regulatory changes get in the way, or or just
Correct.
whims of politicians potentially even.
Yeah.
Um, And so certainly having, building your house on top of a sandy foundation has its risks in both directions, from as a content creator or as an agency. So
Yeah,
that's a great point. So what about, for agencies in eating their own dog food, like channel mix for an agency obviously is different than channel mix for their clients.
correct.
So do you advise that the agency should essentially almost treat itself as a client, or should the CMO be more walled off than that?
Yeah, no, I think I'll tell you the best case. Best case scenario is that you have dedicated resources focused exclusively on growing the agency. What you typically see is you have the founder or someone on the executive team who's responsible for growth, and they have to beg, borrow, and steal resources from the client-facing folks who are doing the SEO for the clients and the SEO for the websites and everything else. Of course, the challenge with that is that they get treated like the absolute worst client, when in fact they should be the world's best client in the agency, because it's the engine that helps them to grow. And that's why this sort of shared approach is very practical, but it's not ideal, I would say.
And what about the marketing mix for agencies and how that's
Yeah.
changed? I mean, I recently invented a technology that I decided that I planned from the beginning to spin out, which was an AI-powered voicemail drop system, specifically
Ooh,
because I found it so hard to reach back out to prospects, including,
yes.
my 29,000 closest friends on LinkedIn. Right? So
Yeah.
even though I could email them and I
Yeah.
could potentially email them, I was like, I'm going to have to use the phone. So,
Yeah.
I built the technology that would allow me to do that. But obviously, for an agency that, they're depending on their hyper
Yeah.
specialization, I would imagine the marketing mix changes. If you're going to be going after dentists, perhaps the mix changes versus going after HVAC or contractors, right?
100%.
And
So
so when you talk that through with your clients who may be in one
yeah.
of those categories, what are some best practices as they evaluate their channel mix?
The first marketing strategy or sales strategy you need to take is to specialize in a vertical. That's my perspective. By doing that, you begin to build expertise that helps you to differentiate in the market. And of course, that differentiation leads to the ability to have premium pricing, attract better clients, better margins. That's the reasoning behind it. But to answer your question, let's say you are specialized in HVAC businesses or manufacturers or whatever that vertical market is. We'll just call it plumbers for today. There are four primary ways that you can grow your agency from a systematic perspective. The first one is doing events. Because you are in a vertical market, one of the benefits of having a vertical specialization is that every vertical market is kind of like a small village, right? Everyone kind of knows everyone else. Everyone is looking to see in the marketplace who's doing what, who's getting ahead, and so on and so forth. So you have that built-in network effect. And the way to grow your agency in that context is to go and build direct relationships with those, let's call them influencers, those people who have a lot of sort of social capital in the industry. And so the way to do that is through going to the conferences, the events, and like I said, being there physically. And of course, the first year you go, no one knows you. The second year, people recognize you. The third year, you're all best friends, type of thing. So you begin to build a reputation, name for yourself, by actually going to physical events. The next sort of channel, in addition to events, is content. So content really answers the question: do I know, like, and trust this person? The way that people shop today, let's call it, as I said, plumbers. A plumber may hear about an agency, but they're a dime a dozen. The way that they would get closer to a sale is by consuming content. So you as an agency have to commit to putting out a lot of content. I don't care if it's LinkedIn, I don't care if it's YouTube or a podcast, but you need to create a place for people to know you, like you, and trust you through your content. So that's a big part of it. One of the most powerful ways to do that is through monthly webinars or monthly workshops. I prefer workshops because it gives your prospective clients an opportunity to see what it's like to work with you or your SMEs, right? So doing a monthly workshop is kind of bread and butter. You need to do that. You have to have some type of ongoing content. The third one is, broadly speaking, inbound, and I'm thinking like paid media. Okay. So anything you could do from a paid search, remarketing, advertising on vertical specific newsletters and associations, all of those things will add incremental. And then the fourth one, in addition to events, content, inbound, is what I call gift-based outbound. And the beauty of gift-based outbound, it's the opposite kind of traditional outbound, which is you you go out and you buy a huge list of dentists or plumbers, and then you start calling them, right? It's volume first. Gift-based outbound is you develop a short list of your dream 100 clients, if you like Chet Holmes, or a short list, and you send them a thoughtful gift as a way to open up a conversation and a relationship. It's a very powerful way to go direct into the marketplace and build sales. And it is how we grew Scorpion from literally from 20 million to 200 million. Half of that revenue was generated from gift-based outbound. It's very powerful.
So I've been involved in gift-based outbound conversations before internally. Wonderful. And also with clients. Yeah. And of course, the first thing to come up is, okay, so what's the appropriate gift size? Which one strategy is to size the gift size to the size of the opportunity, right?
Right.
And the other is just make it big enough that it matters and makes an impact and shows that you cared enough. Correct. To think that you could help them, that you're willing to invest, right? Yeah. And so do you recommend sort of a one-size-fits-all approach once you choose to go down the route, or do you actually go a little bit more hyper-personalized and say, listen, this guy's LinkedIn profile is all about golf, so let's just give him something golf-related, right? Yeah. As opposed to whatever we were going to send everybody else.
Well, I'll tell you a quick story, a massive success story when it comes to gift-based outbound. I kind of illustrate the point I want to make, which is that we had a division at Scorpion, which was targeting franchise businesses, multi-location businesses, right. Primarily in home services, but others as well. And we had a sales rep. He was a VP of sales. He had a list of 100 franchise businesses that he had to try and close in a year. He wasn't going to close all of them, but that was his target list.
Right. And was that at the corporate level or at the local level?
At the corporate level.
Okay.
So we only sold to corporate.
Yeah.
And on this list, there was a franchise that he really wanted to build a relationship with. Like, she was very well known, very well respected. He would call her direct, she'd ignore him. He would get introduced to him, didn't get anywhere. Couldn't get a sales conversation with her. So one day he's researching this CEO. It turns out she was interviewed in a magazine. He reads the interview, and in the interview it says she was asked, "What was your all-time favorite quote? Like, what's your favorite quote?" And she said in the interview, "My all-time favorite quote was a quote from my dad, and he said two things: be authentic and tell great stories." So what Justin did is he went straight to Etsy, found an amazing artist, and had them embroider a pillow with her. It was from her father, that quote, that father's quote. Sent that pillow to the CEO, and that led to a phone call, which led to a relationship, which led to a $1.7 million deal. Okay. That is, I would say, the best case scenario. At scale, it's hard to do that. Right? We had a 60-person sales team at Scorpion, like direct sellers, all had quotas, and each of them, on the behalf of corporate marketing, which is my team, we would send them 250 gifts each per salesperson per quarter. A lot of volume. We tried for a minute to get them to personalize the gifts, but they couldn't. It took too long. It was just not practical. Yeah. And so I would say anyone who's going down the road of developing this, you don't want to start at the scaled end of the scale, let's call it, where you're just sending the same gift to tens of thousands of people. I'd rather recommend that you start with a short list of 5 to 10 people that you're maybe doing a little more of the personalization. You're doing the thoughtfulness, and so that you can get some early wins. You can start to build some momentum, and you can get some evidence that, hey, we could actually use this more strategically in our agency to help us to grow with more intention.
So physically, one of the fun things that is a very similar conversation, it relates to sort of trade show giveaways, right? Yes. Which is what has a moderate cost but extremely high perceived value, yes. Right? So, one of the reasons Giving Forward launched Good Picks, its charity headshots platform, was because of that, right? Because the perceived value of a professional headshot is super
It's
high,
wonderful.
right?
Wonderful.
But the
Yeah.
actual cost when you're doing them in a factory environment is moderate,
Peanuts.
not
Yeah.
as cheap as a mug, right? You can get a
Right.
mug cheaper when you do the math, right? And you take the $200 an hour of the photographer and all the other costs associated with it. But because the perceived value is so high, that over-indexed, right? So
100%.
as one thinks through the same gifting scenario, what are some fun methods of ideation so that you
Yeah.
can determine, okay, this has an unusually high perceived value and it's really not that expensive. And
Yep.
certainly you've got the idea of doing things digitally, right? You can do gift cards to a particular restaurant, and you may be able to even buy those at a slight discount, right? If you buy them in bulk,
Sure. Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
But it's not tactile, right?
Right.
So the tactile gifts also potentially have a higher perceived value. That you took the trouble to find their postal mailing address. You literally boxed it and shipped it, or you can find
Yeah.
a third party to do that. So how
Yes.
have you recommended folks approach that differently than they do their trade show decisioning, right?
Well, in the context of at a trade show, like what do you bring
Yeah.
to a trade show?
No, it's really
Or
more from the perspective of how would you treat it differently? Because
yes.
trade show
Oh
is a one
God.
size fits all,
Yes.
right? I just
Yeah.
need to find something that has high
Right.
perceived value
Oh my gosh.
that's not going to
Yes.
break my bank,
Right.
right? But
Right.
on the hyper personalized level, you may empower the VPs of sales to have a budget, right?
Yeah.
And so certain people get certain type of gifts, certain people get other
Right.
types of gifts, or maybe they're one-offs because you know that an embroidered pillow is going to totally rock it, right?
Exactly.
And so, as you think that through, you
Yep.
know, hyper personalization is more difficult to scale. Although now with ChatGPT research, you could probably do a fair amount of creepy research
Yes.
on somebody and
Yeah.
not have to
Right.
read the article to find out that their dad had a
Yeah.
quote, right? You may be able to surface that with some fun prompt engineering. So,
Right.
so
Well,
how
what's
should
interesting?
you
Yeah.
deal
So
with that?
what's interesting is, in fact, I have a quote here from John Ruhlin, who wrote the book Giftology. He has a great quote. He says, "It's the thoughtful thought that counts." Right? I've received, I'm sure you have as well, sales reps at software companies trying to get me to use their software. They'll send me a mug of from my college. I went to UC Santa Cruz, banana slugs, right?
Right.
And so they'd send me, which is easy to find. It's on my LinkedIn. And it's
Yeah.
like, it's cute, but it's not the embroidered pillow vibe, right?
Yeah, it didn't require much thought for sure.
No, exactly. And so it does require. So what we did after doing a lot of this at Scorpion, we spent literally, you'd be amazed, Kevin, we spent $3 million a year on sending gifts to cold prospects. We did a lot of this. The criteria we used in order to be able to qualify to send out a gift is that it must be unique. You can't send them the conference swag because you're right, it's just going to be ignorable. It
Yeah.
has to be striking, which means it has to wake someone up. So when you receive an amazing gift, the great thing that happens is you get really present. Okay, it's like you and me and everyone listening. We all walk through life in a half hypnosis, right? We're thinking about what we said yesterday on the podcast. We're worried about what's going to happen on the, to the stock market, whatever it is. We're never fully present. A great gift is it brings you right to the present, right? And that's why food is really wonderful. Like amazing gourmet treats is really wonderful because if it's really that special, you're present, you're enjoying the sugar rush and all that stuff. And then the third criteria, so you have unique, striking, and leaves an impression, right? At Scorpion, we were really positioning ourselves as a premium brand. We wanted to let people know through our marketing that we really cared about client experience. So that translated into what the gift was, what the wrapping was, what the card was, the experience of opening it. All of those things had to reinforce our positioning. So the question is, what is the impression you want to create? So the way to get there and use this is what I recommend doing is doing a brainstorm session, write down a bunch of different gift ideas. You do search on ChatGPT and there's a whole bunch of stuff that you can find to source ideas, but then put all of those ideas through the criteria, through the filter of, is it unique? Is it striking? Will it leave an impression? You've checked those 3 boxes, you probably have a gift that's worth sending.
So one thing that I've done, I know when I've received one of those gifts that breaks through the clutter in all those ways that you just described, is I've actually bothered to not quite create an unboxing level social thank you,
Yeah,
but some level
right,
of social thank you. I'll lay that thing out on my desk. I'll take a picture of it.
right.
I'll tag the person on LinkedIn and say,
Yeah,
"Hey, wow, that was really cool. Insert name
yeah,
here, insert company
right,
here."
right.
Did you see that happening with any regularity when
Uh,
you were doing your gifting?
so I would say it was not every day. It was irregular, but it did happen. So people would put up a post on LinkedIn saying this amazing company, we've never heard of them. They send us these amazing cookies, and they take a photo of it. So it absolutely would happen. But that brings up a good point, which is that for this to be a true sales strategy, with success, it is not a you send a bunch of gifts out and you sit by the phone for it to ring, or
No, a one-off, right? It's not a
yeah,
one-off
or keep
thing.
refreshing LinkedIn to see if they posted something.
Yeah, yeah.
It requires follow up and timely follow up, because when your prospect is enjoying that amazing bottle of wine or that amazing cookie, you want to be contacting them at that moment, not 6 weeks later when life has moved on, right? So the timing really matters on the follow up.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned wine, and when we've done it in the past, because we had done some level of gifting, it did it in the
Yeah,
past with a moderate level of success, and
yeah,
the scalability was the reason we never took it to the next level. But
yeah,
we had some internal discussions where we moved away from alcohol unless the person's social media indicated that it
yeah.
was fine for them or that was a
Yes,
passion area for them, right?
right.
Because some people, like my good friend Jeffrey Hazlitt, is a Scotch enthusiast, right? So for him Scotch means
Easy,
something
right?
and is perfectly on brand
Yep,
for him to receive. But other people might just decide, even if they're not teetotaling, they may be trying to cut back on calories and they just don't want the extra liquid calories as a
yeah,
temptation. And so, for whatever reason, we just sort of thought, okay, better to stay away from that as our go-to and use it
yep.
more as a one-off. Did that ever come up in conversations as well with your teams?
So we actually sent a fair bit of wine. We actually had one client who had a winery up in Napa, and so we invested in our client, and it turned out to be a fantastically ROI positive campaign, like really, really great. Uh, what we found is that we never heard back, and what our assumption was is that even if someone was not super, if they weren't, into alcohol for whatever reason, that the way, alcohol still is part of a social currency. What people will do is they'll just put it, if it's a nice bottle, $100 or $200 bottle of wine, they'll probably put it somewhere that they could bring to a party as a favor, right? Not necessarily drink it, but they'll hold on to it or give it to
Yeah.
someone because that gift will make them look good and generous and all those
Yeah.
things. So
Oh,
they're still
great
valuable.
point. Great point. So what else should teams be thinking about at agencies? In agencies, I think sales and marketing are a little bit more commingled, and that's true maybe
Yes.
in SaaS-based software and some other industry categories
Right.
as well, where the silos of sales and marketing are sometimes pretty far away from each other. But in certain industries, there's a lot of overlap, right, between
Yeah.
the levels of communication and the alignment of strategies. So, what should agencies be thinking about as for those who have several reps, involved in outbound business development, and they've got a marketing team supporting those reps? How should they think about that in the most strategic way?
It's a great question. So I am of the belief that, and well, I'll back up. A lot of agencies depend on inbound. Like they have a great content machine. Maybe they built some branding, some positioning around their founder or their content. However, the world is changing, and depending on inbounds is continuing to be challenging. And so, therefore, my perspective and my belief is that the best way for an agency to guarantee their long-term viability is to figure out how to create sales on demand. My methodology is definitely focused on gift-based outbound because of how impactful it is. I think in addition to doing that level of outbound, I think one of the most important areas where agencies underinvest is truly in treating themselves as their best client. So an example of that might look like having quarterly strategy meetings that are tied to specific MQL or SQL targets. So for instance, we're entering into Q3 as we record this. What is our written Q3 plan across all of the domains we talked about? What is the content play? What's the inbound play? What's the sales play? how many SQLs do we need to generate? And how does that tie to the overall corporate revenue? Just doing that exercise and being able to connect all the dots between all the activities we're doing and the results we want, that in and of itself is a fantastic investment of time, because what you'll find is that it's likely that you're investing in activities that aren't really tied to an outcome, i.e., like, let's do 5 blog posts a week. Okay, great. So what's that supposed to do? Well, I don't know. Let's check the box, but let's do it anyways, right? No, it's, well, how many SQLs do we want? And what do we have to do? What has to be true for us to be able to get these sales opportunities? So doing that intentional thinking on a regular basis, quarterly, is a good cadence, and it just requires a founder who values the importance of planning and makes the investments so that it's not an afterthought, which it typically is in this world.
So one thing that's true for agencies, it's a B2B sale, right? So
Correct.
while we'd all like to pretend that there's a single decision maker and you gift that person and then everything from that moment forward is gravy,
Yeah.
it's super easy and frictionless. Reality is it looks a little bit more like the way a SaaS company might sell using ABM, account-based marketing,
Sure.
which is
That's right.
there's going to be influencers internally, some of whom can help say yes, and some of whom can help say no. And understanding those, how have you slotted those into the gift-based strategy and the overall
Sure.
strategy as well? I mean, obviously,
Yeah.
they don't all reach the level of the embroidered pillow, which is hyper personalized, but they probably need some level of touch from the business development team. So how do you
Yeah.
weave that in?
So the purpose of the gift, the inherent value in doing that, is just getting the appointment. So typically what that means is you want to go high in the organization. So if it is a larger, more complex buying team, let's say at the franchises, you'd have the CEO, the CMO, the VP of marketing, the director of marketing, the social team, all these people,
Yeah.
all these people who are involved in the decision. You go high, and even if that person is involved in the buying process for the agency services, it's likely that they're going to, if the gift is really well thought out and it's intentional and it communicates the right message, it will get to the right person. And again, you have to do the follow-up. That follow-up will lead to a conversation because there's a little bit of reciprocity there. And at that point, you can go for a meeting. At that point, you don't use gifts anymore. You just follow your traditional sales process.
Right.
It's leveraging the sort of the inherent interest in the bank. Like if you send a gift, you're building some interest. You're standing out. You're communicating, hey, you're an important person. Really love the opportunity, just at least to build a relationship with you.
Do you feel like there's a place for that reciprocity recipe when it comes to those secondary underlings of the CEO as well, where you're giving them things of value that can help them be the hero and do their job better?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'll give you one example that immediately comes to mind. And again, depending on where the folks who are listening, what their focus is, but we at Scorpion, we focused on law firms, and our number one barrier was the gatekeeper, the office manager, the person who answered the phone, who wouldn't let us through to the attorney. If we can get through to the attorney, we could actually have maybe a sale, right?
Yeah.
And so what we would do is we would address the gatekeeper with an amazing bouquet of flowers or with cookies, amazing gourmet treats to build reciprocity, so that when we would call, they would say something along the lines of, "Oh, Kevin, you're the one who sent those amazing flowers. Oh my God, those were so sweet. Thank you so much. How can I help you?"
Right.
So that is one example. But then in a more complex sale where you maybe have a larger buying committee, certainly you can do that. There's cost and expense and time associated with doing that. It becomes a little bit more tricky. And frankly, we didn't do a lot of that at Scorpion.
How about the sort of team-based approach? I'm a huge fan of snacks as an incentive. If you
Yeah.
don't exactly know who might be influential
Yes.
or not,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
You can, whether you do it yourself and you just find like 3 gigantic boxes of something at Costco and send
Yeah.
it for the entire office, or you find somebody who can do it for you, right? I
Yeah.
mean, that's one of those situations where, you just say, you figure out what the marketing message is, right? But then
Right.
somehow you have to figure out how to get make sure that the folks who come by and grab the snacks at least know where it's from, if possible, right?
Absolutely.
But that's a sort of the shotgun approach
Right.
to to gifting, to sort of remove friction at the other the broader sense, right, within
Yeah, I
your.
mean, if you're selling to a sales team, buy them a dozen pizzas, and at the end of the quarter when they're all jamming trying to hit quota, like that's a nice gesture.
Yeah, right. But maybe not the beer,
Yeah,
because
not the beer.
their
Yeah,
pitches may change. But again,
yeah, their
maybe get
boss
more
may not be
creative.
happy with
Yeah,
this. Yeah, non-alcoholic beer maybe.
right.
Hmm.
So, what didn't we cover yet that we should cover as it relates
Yeah,
to,
you know,
agencies targeting their clients better and getting their, their KPIs higher?
yeah, I think in today's world, it's easy to get caught up in sales and marketing tactics, but I think of it like an iceberg where the top 10% of an iceberg is above the waterline. And that's really where the sales and marketing tactics come in. Even gift-based outbound is one of those type of tactics. But where I think the real power in agency growth is today is below the waterline, which is where it is the vertical selection. You want to be strategic in who you're targeting and make sure that aligns with your strengths, with the market opportunity, the kind of agency you want to build. And then once you've identified that vertical market, you need to do sort of the emotional labor to build up empathic messaging and positioning so that people in that industry that you're targeting really recognize you as someone who understands them at a deep level. And I think that's the type of work that is the groundwork that's required for things like sales and marketing tactics to really work, like gift-based outbound, like conferences and all those other things. If you have all of those foundational elements in place, the likelihood of everything else you do downstream is going to be much more powerful, because at the end of the day, the agency sale is a trust me sale, right? They're going to have to make some kind of leap over some kind of hole or gap to say yes to you or someone else. And so what you want to do is you want to make that gap as short as possible, and you do that by communicating that you are the world's best, or the best specialist, or the best expert in solving the problem that they're coming to you for.
Yeah, that's a great point. So there's a ton more in your book,
Yeah,
both from the strategic level and perhaps at the tactical level as well. And you were kind enough to offer the free audiobook
that's
to
right.
our viewers and listeners. So how should they get that book if they'd like to receive a
Thank you,
copy?
Kevin. Yeah, so in there, it's a whole $200 million strategy and how to, again, escape generalist trap and escape founder-led sales. You can go to anyoneNotEveryone.com and you can download the full audiobook, the same audiobook that's on Amazon and Audible. You can download the whole thing, listen to it. You also get a workbook that includes videos, worksheets, templates, a lot of really powerful tools. So you can actually make the transformation through the book without ever having to hire me or anything. You just do it yourself. It's all available for you.
So for those folks who know that they would do better with a trainer, either
Yeah.
in their workouts or in their agency
Yes.
business development efforts, I assume you are able to come in there and sort of be the
Yes.
internal advocate, be the champion, assist folks with their strategic roadmaps, their editorial roadmaps, et cetera.
Yep.
So
That's right.
what do those typical relationships look like?
Yeah. So for those folks who want to move quickly, they want to see results. They don't want to spend 12 months trying to figure this out on their own. I do partner with a select few of agencies where I can come in and we will build the roadmap. We'll build the go-to-market strategy around the positioning, the messaging, and then what do we do to attract the right best fit leads for them in this vertical market. So the way I work now is I do full day strategy sessions. I like to move fast. I don't want to spread things over 3 to 6 months. So we'll get through a full day session. We'll get a lot of the strategic selection, the positioning, the messaging, and some of the go-to-market strategy in a day. For the folks who have already vertically specialized and they want to bring in things like gift-based outbound, I do have a program, a 12-week program where small group of agencies, we build a gift-based outbound strategy for them, and then we do a sales methodology training to help them to close those deals as well.
Great, great. Well, thanks, Corey, so much for sharing
Thank you.
all that wisdom and best practices with us.
Thank you so much, Kevin. It's been a treat.
Kevin Lee's Power Marketing is available on all your favorite podcast networks. Kevin loves helping businesses excel at marketing. Having marketing challenges? Just like Santa in The Miracle on 34th Street, if Kevin can't help you, he'll know someone who can. Find him on LinkedIn, subscribe, or follow.